So this week's episode of Fruits Basket, we get quite a bit of development, some backstory, especially seeing with Momiji and just what led him to be the way he is, and just so much just interesting foreshadowing for future events surrounding our main girl Toru, as well as Kyo and Yuki. I actually want to first talk about just the Central 3 trio and just where that all went first. We'll get into Momiji, who was probably the star of this episode after, but there's a couple of fun things throughout this episode that I quite like, just kind of tying together loose ends, like why is Toru someone who is so determined to just care for people when they're sick? We learned that her father ended up dead from a cold, which kind of relates back to the intro and why she was so scared of them having colds, kind of that fear that someone else would die from something that generally is something that you get over within a few days to a week. You have the baseball cap being re-brought back up, and it is Yuki who was the one who was in the past, who clearly they were good friends, and where that might go romantically. I personally think most importantly was Kyo in this episode in terms of this trio, because throughout this kind of grave journey of, visiting Toru's mother's grave, it's the year anniversary of her death, and just that entire situation played out so differently than I was expecting. Not only do they have things like a picnic at her grave, because her mother was someone who was just someone who wanted to have fun. She's not someone who'd want you to mope for her. She would rather you, just embrace, who she was and enjoy your life. And I thought it was interesting how they played that all out, but how everyone was looking at the grave other than Kyo. Kyo's someone who kept looking away and walking away, and based on the waves, and just, it feels like, obviously Yuki has, his negativity that kind of bounces off of him from his own past, but something is very off with Kyo, and that makes me incredibly excited, because Kyo's my favorite character in Fruits Basket, minus Toru, of course. So to see him at the end of the episode say, "I'm sorry," when she is sleeping, like, there's clearly some things that are troubling him from his past, and clearly that somehow relates to Toru, or at least he's convincing himself. So I think that future arc with him, especially with Yuki, because Yuki relates to the baseball cap, how that's going to either drive a wedge between all three of them, or maybe it will allow them all to progress in an interesting way. That has me incredibly excited, but I definitely enjoyed the visit to the grave, because I feel like Toru is someone I can relate to in the way that she deals with grief. She's someone who doesn't want to just kind of like break down and cry around people. She wants to put on the tough face and just accept what you have around you right now. And the fact of the matter is, she wants to be happy around her mother's grave. She doesn't want to cry around it. She'd be the type of person who would cry alone in her room because she doesn't want to show weakness. And I really enjoy just how she's someone who's experienced so much grief throughout this. She's lost both of her parents, and she continues to just get bad moment after bad moment after bad moment. And like with most of the characters, we're saying, how does she put on that smile? And that's where I personally relate. It doesn't matter how much bad shit that happens, you can just make it seem like, you're doing fine. I've had so many times where I've gotten up and recorded reviews, and you wouldn't be able to tell how much bad shit that's been going on within my life with family and things like that. It's just, I love how she puts on that face. It may not be healthy, but I understand where she's coming from, and I really enjoyed that development. But in the case of Momiji, let's discuss this, because this is a kid who's very bubbly, very positive, and at first glance you would think is very tropey, like his introduction episode. But to see where his family life went, I'm glad they're shifting it up. It's not just everyone hates everyone within their family. The fact of the matter is, his mother had to forget who he was because she hated him. And I like the idea that this curse, either you're going to be super overprotective of your children, or you're going to absolutely hate them if they're possessed by one of the zodiac spirits. And that is such a painful moment. Imagining that you can either have a loving parent who will just nurture you maybe a little too much and smother you to death with love, or she'll literally try to kill herself because she hates you that much. How does a kid deal with that? And to see how Momiji is someone who just, holy shit, it's not even like the father was a bad person. I was expecting the father was a bad person, but the father is saying, if you love your mother like me, you have to let her forget you, but I promise that I'll love you enough for the both of us. Like, imagining not only learning that your parent tried to kill themselves because they hate you, but then your other parent says you have to forget her, otherwise she just won't be able to make it, but I'll love you enough. This kid experienced a lot, and kind of similar to Toru, maybe puts on the face so just the positivity surrounds you, because why kind of bask in the negativity when you can just, try to be positive and keep allowing you to live another day? But I really enjoy Momoji's drive of not forgetting. even the painful memories are a part of what makes life what it is, and he never wants to forget those like his mother did. It's kind of like the selfish wish. He wishes that maybe the mother could have just embraced the painful memories, but you can see that curse is a little too much for any human to bear. The episode starts off with the friends pretty much saying, like, you know, if something happened to Toru, I don't think just a year later I could be smiling like her. She has incredible strength and I don't know how she does it. And in this episode, you see Momiji saying, like, the pain is part of life and we have to embrace it. I just love how all the different conversations throughout this episode, it doesn't matter who you're talking to, the way the episodes are structured is it's done in a way to make it so when you have a conversation between Toru and her friends, that will eventually relate to what happens with Momiji and Toru in the future of this episode or even episodes down the line. I love how the dialogue is structured in such a way to make it feel like everything is a very kind of elegant puzzle. It's kind of being snapped together in rapid succession, and you're seeing just the way the dialogue and just the arc at hand kind of play out. It just feels like a really interesting and complex piece of art, but at the same time it has a simplistic beauty to it that doesn't make it feel so just jarring, like there's too much to it, but it has enough layers to really make it feel like it's master class. I just thought this episode was incredible. There was very little comedy. There was a couple of moments where just, you know, Toru had a over-exaggerated reaction, or even Kyo, and those were fun, of course, because I love the chibi or just more basic art style that Fruits Basket is known for, but I just love how just serious and dramatic this episode was, and how at multiple points I'm sure many viewers will say, why are they doing this? Why have a picnic at a grave? Why do this? But I honestly felt like I understood where Toru's mentality was coming from. It's something I kind of relate to in terms of how she deals with grief and how she puts on that face, even if it may not be the healthiest thing to do at times, and I thought it was really good. This episode not only fleshed out Momiji with his backstory, so you understand a lot more of what drives him and why he clouds himself in such a bubbly persona, but just the shattering realization that all this time that he's been kind of sneaking around and hanging out with Toru or just bumping into Toru is because he had to look at his mother from a distance. The just sheer love he has for her, how beautiful she is, how much he just talks about his family, to then just the realization that, yeah, I can't be with them. And the fact that he doesn't break down and cry, he just says, this is the way it has to be, but I won't forget. I think just the concept of memories was so great in this episode, and then just the layering for future events in the second core, the whole baseball cap coming back into play. I really appreciate that Fruits Basket isn't something that brings up a kind of subject matter or just a potential plotline and then tosses it away. They always come back eventually, and then Kyo being very emo and disturbing and wondering what happened in his past and why he seemingly is blaming himself for something that's related to Toru, or something to that nature. And I'm really excited for both those plot points and how just the potential romance routes could flourish in the future, because it'll be interesting, because like with her friends, they're all dense to romance. They all really are, and it'll be interesting to see where all three of their hearts truly lie by the end, because sometimes you think you want one thing, but then once you actually have it, you realize it wasn't actually for you all this time. And obviously Toru isn't going to end up with all these boys, so it'll be interesting to see if she ends up with any of them or just one of them in the future. But it's a very fun episode overall. Even though it was so dramatic and just, it had a lot of emotional pull to it, it didn't feel like it was a depressing episode. It just felt like it was a bittersweet episode. Just the way you have characters like Momiji just saying, like, this is the way it has to be. You see Toru break down and crying, but he just carries on. He keeps moving forward, embracing the pain, and I think that's a super important lesson, that even if something hurts, it's better to feel that pain than nothing at all. That's why it's so important to not numb yourself, be it substance, to just very toxic ways of life. And I love how this episode with the second half is all about Toru embracing her mother's anniversary for her death, and not, you know, just shattering in grief, but just being around the people she cares for. And because she's surrounded by people who love her, that time wasn't a hard experience for her. It was something that made her feel happy, because she got to be with her mother. She believes that there's something more. She believes in spirits, things like that. So she doesn't feel like her mother's just dead and gone. As well, she gets to be around people who truly love her. And I just love how even her friends that I thought would be one and done characters, hell, the whole idea of reading waves, I thought that was going to be a disposable gag, but it seems like that actually is something that's a part of this world and its mechanics. I just appreciate that Fruits Basket doesn't just bring up things to then just throw them away. I appreciate the fact that it is an overarching story with so many layers, and I'm really happy with the direction the series is going. One of the things that continues to stand out the most to me within Fruits Basket is how at so many points, like pretty much every episode is resulting in, this is a sad character who's experienced horrible things in the past, but I like how every time you see someone different, it doesn't feel like a copy and paste of the same story. like Momiji and just how that family situation occurred. It's not just another Akito who's a horrible person, it's just this curse screwed a family over and this is the sins they had to bear. I like how every time you get depressing subject matter, it doesn't feel like just that copy and paste, which a lot of authors get wrong, especially with such a large cast of characters. It's pretty hard to have this whole idea of the Soma curse and just how it just breaks families apart and have it feel just distinct. In most authors' hands, I would expect a lot of similarities, and even though there is technically similarities with how characters experience grief and how they kind of keep pushing forward, the core theme and just the overall story and main details to their past is completely different, and just the way they shape in the present, it just feels like actual people behaving differently, experiencing grief and positivity in completely unique ways. And that's a really important and crucial part to Fruits Basket that without it, this series wouldn't be nearly as good as it currently is. Now, the first season has finally got a confirmation of 25 episodes, so this season will be 25 episodes, and then we'll get the second season probably 6 months or a bit later down the line, maybe even a year later, depends on how long it'll take for the production. But nonetheless, we do have at least one more core of this season, and then obviously a few more cores down the line, but Fruits Basket is bringing their A game, and I appreciate the fact that everyone is getting their chance to shine, getting that backstory, getting future plot points, and it's really becoming something special. But let me know what everyone thought. For fans of the original anime, fans of the manga, or anime originals like myself, what do you think of this very emotional, but almost optimistic in a strange way episode of Fruits Basket? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like, and also hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.